kid behind the counter poked through the jewelry box with one finger, like he was checking if leftovers were still good. "This is all costume," he said. Eugene Pollard stood on the other side of the counter, 81 years old, tan windbreaker, bifocal glasses, his dead wife's jewelry box open between them, and said nothing. "Yeah, we can't really move this stuff," the kid said. He picked up a necklace, let it dangle, dropped it back in. "I could maybe do $30 for the whole box. That's being generous, buddy." $30 for every piece of jewelry Eugene had given his wife in 51 years of marriage, for the earrings from JCPenney and the bracelets from the Avon catalog and the ring with the blue stone that cost $45 and that Noreen wore every day like it was sapphire because Eugene gave it to her and that made it sapphire. $30. And the kid called him Buddy. Let me tell you how Eugene Pollard ended up standing in a pawn shop on East Pershing Road in Decatur, Illinois, watching a 24-year-old in a backwards baseball cap poke through his dead wife's jewelry with one finger. Eugene and Noreen Pollard were married for 51 years. They got married in 1970 at First Baptist Church in Decatur. She was a secretary at the Caterpillar plant. He was a pipe fitter at the same plant. They met in the cafeteria. She was eating a ham sandwich, and he asked if the seat across from her was taken. She said, "It is now." That was Noreen. She always had an answer ready before you finished the question. They had 3 kids, Danny, Lisa, and Kevin. They raised them in a 3-bedroom ranch house on Mound Road that they bought in 1973 for $22,000 with a VA loan from Eugene's 2 years in the Army. The house had beige carpet, a chain-link fence, and a garage that Eugene used as a workshop because things broke and you either fixed them or you didn't have them anymore. That's how it worked when you made $14.80 an hour and had 3 kids who needed braces and school shoes and winter coats every October. Noreen kept the house together. She clipped coupons from the Sunday paper and kept them in an envelope sorted by expiration date. She bought ground beef in the family pack and froze it in 1-pound portions. She washed Ziploc bags and hung them on the dish rack to dry because they were still good. When the dryer broke in 1989, she hung clothes on a line in the basement for 6 months until Eugene found a used one at a garage sale for $75. She never complained about any of it, not once. Not when the kids needed things they couldn't afford, and not when the furnace died in February and Eugene fixed it himself from a library book, and not when they ate the same 5 meals on rotation for 6 years, because those were the meals that fit the budget. Meatloaf Monday, spaghetti Wednesday, fish sticks Friday, chicken Sunday, leftovers the rest. The kids didn't know they were poor because Noreen made sure they didn't know. And every birthday and Christmas and anniversary for 51 years, Eugene bought her a piece of jewelry. Nothing expensive. They never had expensive. Earrings from JCPenney, a bracelet from the Avon catalog, a necklace from a little shop downtown that closed in 2004, a ring with a blue stone that cost $45. All of it went in the jewelry box, the dark walnut box with the brass keyhole that Noreen's mother had given her as a wedding gift. It sat on the right side of the dresser, next to a bottle of Jean Naté body splash that Noreen had been wearing since 1978. Every piece Eugene ever gave her lived in that box, tangled together the way women's jewelry gets tangled, the chains wrapped around the earrings, the bracelets looped through the necklaces, a mess that Noreen could navigate blindfolded because she knew every piece by touch. Mixed in with the costume stuff was some real jewelry too. Noreen's mother's wedding ring, a thin gold band, a pair of pearl earrings that Noreen said her grandmother brought from Poland, a cameo brooch, ivory-colored, a woman's profile carved into it, set in a gold frame with tiny seed pearls around the edge. Noreen never wore the cameo. She said it was too fancy for Decatur. The pearl earrings she kept at the bottom of the box, underneath everything, because she said she didn't want to lose them. Eugene always figured they were fake. Noreen always said, "I think they're real, but I'm not sure." They'd been having that conversation for 51 years, and neither one of them ever bothered to find out. Noreen passed away 14 months ago. Lung cancer. She'd never smoked a day in her life. The doctor said it was just bad luck, which is a terrible thing to say to someone. She was 79. She went into the hospital on a Monday and didn't come home. Eugene sat in the room with her for 8 days. Danny came from Indianapolis. Lisa came from St. Louis. Kevin called from San Diego and said he'd try to get a flight, but the flights were expensive and he had the kids and his back was acting up. Kevin didn't make it in time. Noreen died on a Tuesday evening at 6:40 p.m. Eugene remembered because he looked at the clock when the nurse came in. He was holding her hand. She was wearing the ring with the blue stone. Eugene went home to an empty house. An empty house at 81 is a different thing than an empty house at 25. At 25, it means freedom. At 81, it means the television is always on because you can't stand the quiet. It means you eat dinner at 4:30, not because you're hungry, but because if you wait until 6, the evening stretches out so long you don't know what to do with yourself. It means you make a pot of coffee in the morning and pour 2 cups out of habit and then stare at the second cup on the counter until you pour it down the sink. It means the phone rings and your heart jumps because maybe it's her, and then you remember, and then you answer it and it's a robot trying to sell you a car warranty. The hardest part wasn't the grief he expected. The hardest part was the ordinary things that ambushed him. Reaching for 2 plates at dinner, saying "we" on the phone to the insurance company and having to correct himself. Finding her reading glasses in the couch cushion 3 months later and sitting down and holding them for an hour. The sound of the garage door opening and for 1/2 second thinking it was her coming home from Kroger. The way the bed tilted to one side now because nobody was on the other side to balance it out. The way he still slept on his side, the left side, the side he'd always slept on, because her side wasn't his to take. Eugene ate a lot of Campbell's soup, not because he liked it, because it was easy. You opened the can, poured it in a bowl, microwaved it for 2 minutes, and ate it, standing at the counter watching the news on the little TV he'd put in the kitchen because the dining table was too big for one person. He had a pill organizer on the counter, the plastic kind with the days of the week, blood pressure, cholesterol, baby aspirin, vitamin D. He filled it every Sunday night. That was his week. Pill organizer to pill organizer. The money situation was what it was. Pension from Caterpillar, $1,640 a month. Social Security, $1,480. That's $3,120, which sounds like enough until you subtract the mortgage. $687 a month, which should have been paid off by now, but they'd refinanced in 2008 to help Danny with his divorce. Property tax, insurance, gas, electric, water, Medicare supplemental, $234. Prescriptions, the blood pressure was $18, the cholesterol was $12, but the arthritis medication was $47 because it wasn't on the preferred list. Groceries, gas for the 2009 Buick with 142,000 miles, and a check engine light that had been on since spring. The cell phone Lisa set up for him. $55 a month for a phone he mostly used to check the weather. After everything, Eugene had about $90 left over each month. That was the margin. And when the electric bill came in at $340 in January, $180 higher than usual because he'd kept the thermostat at 73 because his hands went numb below 70 and the arthritis in his knees turned into something that felt like someone driving a nail into the joint. He didn't have it. He had $162 in the checking account and a shut-off notice that said 14 days. He thought about calling Danny. But Danny had his own mortgage and 2 kids in travel baseball, $3,000 a season per kid. He thought about calling Lisa, but she'd just bought a new car and still had student loans from the dental hygiene program at 46. Kevin was out of the question. Kevin hadn't called since November. Eugene didn't call any of them. He sat in his recliner and thought about it for 2 days. He turned the TV to the Weather Channel and let it run while he thought. He thought about Danny paying $6,000 a year for travel baseball. He thought about Lisa paying off student loans at 46. He thought about Kevin not calling since November, and what that meant, and what it didn't mean, and how you can love someone who forgets about you and still not want to ask them for money. Fathers don't call their children and say, "I can't pay the electric bill." That's not how Eugene was raised, and it's not how he raised his kids. You fix things. You figure it out. You find a way. That's what Harold Pollard did when the tractor threw a rod in 1953, and that's what Eugene's mother did when Harold died and left her with a farm she couldn't run and 3 boys she couldn't feed, and she found a way. You always find a way. So Eugene went to the dresser, Noreen's side. He opened the jewelry box. The smell of Jean Naté floated up. Noreen's smell, the smell of 51 years. He hadn't opened it since the day he came home from the hospital with her things in a plastic bag. He figured the whole box together might be worth a few $100s, enough to pay the electric bill. He put it in a Walmart bag because he didn't have a nice bag, and he drove to Quick Cash Pawn on East Pershing Road, and the kid behind the counter, Josh Fenton, 24, backwards baseball cap, oversized polo shirt, basketball shoes that probably cost more than Eugene's monthly prescriptions, looked at the jewelry box the way a mechanic looks at a car that isn't worth fixing. Josh picked up Noreen's mother's wedding ring, a thin gold band, worn almost smooth from decades on a woman's finger. He pulled out a testing kit, rubbed the ring on a black stone, dropped acid on it. 10 carat, he said. Real, but thin. $12 for the ring, maybe 30 for the whole box if you want to dump it. Dump it? He actually said dump it. Eugene looked at the box. He thought about the shutoff notice on the kitchen counter. Day 9. 5 days left. $30 wouldn't help, but nothing else would either. He started to close the lid. What happened next changed everything. Subscribe to Hidden Worth and tell me in the comments, what's the most valuable thing you own that nobody knows about? The shop door opened. A woman walked in, mid-50s, short auburn hair, reading glasses pushed up on her head, a gray wool peacoat over a black turtleneck, leather portfolio under one arm, a Starbucks cup in the other hand. She stamped her boots on the mat and looked around the shop with the quick, efficient glance of someone who knows exactly what she's looking for and doesn't waste time on what she's not. Her name was Catherine Albright, estate jewelry appraiser, GIA graduate gemologist, 28 years in the business. She'd appraised jewelry for Christie's, Heritage Auctions, and half the estate attorneys in central Illinois. She could tell the difference between a $40 ring and a $40,000 ring from 6 feet away, which is almost exactly what happened next. The shop's owner, Josh's father, Mike Fenton, had her on retainer to come in once a month and review any jewelry the shop acquired to make sure they hadn't missed anything valuable. She was supposed to come yesterday. Her car had been in the shop. She came today instead. If she'd come yesterday, Eugene would have already been home with $30 in his pocket and a shutoff notice with 4 days left on it. Life turns on things like that. A car in the shop, a delayed appointment, a woman walking through a door 24 hours late. Catherine set her coffee on the counter. She saw the jewelry box, still open. She almost looked away. It looked like what it looked like, a pile of tangled costume jewelry. Then she saw the cameo. She didn't touch it. She leaned forward. She tilted her head. Something about the carving, the detail in the hair, the curve of the chin, stopped her. "May I?" she said to Eugene. She laid a black velvet cloth on the counter, picked up the cameo with both hands, and held a jeweler's loop to her eye. She was quiet for 30 seconds. Then she set the loop down, turned the brooch over, examined the pin mechanism, the gold frame, the tiny pearls around the edge. "Where did you get this?" she asked. "It was my wife's. Her mother gave it to her. I think it was her grandmother's before that." Catherine nodded. She set the brooch on the velvet. "This isn't costume. This is hand-carved shell, Cassis madagascariensis, helmet shell. The carving quality is exceptional. This level of work is consistent with Italian master carvers from the Torre del Greco region near Naples. The frame is solid gold, 18 karat, possibly higher, and these pearls around the edge appear to be natural seed pearls, not cultured." She pointed to the pin mechanism. This clasp construction is mid to late 19th century, a C-clasp, no safety catch. I'd date this piece to approximately 1860 to 1880. She set it down. This cameo alone, in this condition, at auction, $8,000 to $12,000. Eugene blinked. Josh straightened up on his stool. But that's not what I wanted to show you. Catherine reached into the jewelry box. She moved aside the tangled necklaces, the JCPenney earrings, the Avon bracelets. Her fingers found something at the bottom, underneath everything, pressed against the velvet lining. She pulled out the pearl earrings, the ones Noreen said her grandmother brought from Poland. Catherine held them under the light. She looked through the loop. She rolled one pearl gently between her thumb and finger. Then she held it up to her teeth and rubbed it, a test gemologists use. Cultured pearls feel smooth. Natural pearls feel gritty, like fine sand. Her hand stopped. She lowered the pearl from her teeth. She held it under the light again. She looked at it through the loop one more time, longer this time, turning it slowly between her fingers. Then she set it down on the velvet and took a breath. These are natural saltwater pearls, matched pair, approximately 10 millimeters each. She looked at Eugene. 10-millimeter matched natural saltwater pearls are extraordinarily rare. Natural pearls this size, this quality, this well-matched, they come up at auction maybe a few times a year worldwide. The settings are platinum, Art Deco style, probably 1920s, with small diamond accents. This is not department store jewelry. She put both hands flat on the counter. Eugene, the pearl earrings alone, if confirmed natural, which I believe they will be, are worth between $75,000 and $90,000. The shop went silent. Combined with the cameo, the gold wedding band, and a few other pieces I'd like to examine, you're looking at approximately $97,000, possibly more at auction. $97,000. Josh was gripping the counter behind him. $30. He'd offered $30. He'd poked through it with one finger. He'd called it costume jewelry. He'd called an 81-year-old man Buddy and offered to do him a favor by taking his dead wife's jewelry off his hands for the price of a large pizza. Eugene didn't say anything for a long time. He was looking at the pearl earrings on the black velvet. He was thinking about Noreen's grandmother, a woman named Halina Zukowski, who came from Krakow in 1912 with nothing and worked in a textile factory on the south side of Chicago for 40 years, and somehow, owned a pair of pearl earrings worth $90,000. He was thinking about how Halina must have gotten them, a gift, an inheritance, something from the old country that she carried with her the way immigrants carry the one thing they can't leave behind. He was thinking about Halina giving them to her daughter, and her daughter giving them to Noreen, and Noreen keeping them at the bottom of a walnut box in a ranch house in Decatur while the furnace rattled and the Ziploc bags dried on the dish rack. He was thinking about Noreen saying, "I think they're real," and him saying, "They're probably fake, hun," and both of them being wrong in different directions for 51 years. He was thinking about Noreen keeping them at the bottom of the box, under everything else, the way you keep the things you're most afraid of losing. $97,000, he said, like he was trying to fit the words in his mouth. He looked at the pearl earrings, two small round things, smaller than marbles, sitting on black velvet in a pawn shop in Decatur, Illinois. $97,000, more than he'd made in 3 years at Caterpillar, more than they'd paid for the house on Mound Road, more than he'd earned in any 5-year stretch of his working life. And they'd been sitting at the bottom of a jewelry box on a dresser in a ranch house for 51 years, underneath a pile of JCPenney earrings and Avon bracelets, while he and Noreen ate fish sticks on Fridays and washed Ziploc bags because they were still good. "I'd recommend Christie's or Heritage Auctions," Catherine said. "I can make introductions, no charge." She handed him her card. Josh cleared his throat. "Sir, Look, I'm sorry about earlier. I should have looked more carefully. If you want, I could call my dad and—" Eugene looked at him. Not angry, just tired. The tiredness of being 81 and being called buddy by someone who didn't know the difference between a pile of costume jewelry and a $100,000 pair of pearl earrings. "Son," Eugene said, "you offered me $30 for my wife's jewelry and called me buddy. I've been called a lot of things. Private first class, Mr. Pollard, Gene, Daddy, Pop Pop. My wife called me Eugene because she said my whole name sounded like it meant something." He paused. "Buddy isn't on the list." He didn't say it mean. He didn't raise his voice. He said it the way you state a fact. Like the temperature. Like the time of day. And Josh Fenton, 24 years old, standing behind his father's counter in his father's shop, heard it. You could see him hear it. Something moved behind his eyes. Not shame exactly, but the first cousin of shame. The beginning of understanding that the man standing in front of him wasn't a buddy. He was a father and a husband and a veteran and a pipe fitter who'd worked 31 years for the city and buried the woman he loved and driven to a pawn shop on a Tuesday because the electric company doesn't care about any of that. Eugene closed the jewelry box, put it back in the Walmart bag, picked up Catherine's card, walked to the door. The bell rang. Let me tell you what happened. Eugene called Catherine on Thursday. She drove to his house, the ranch on Mound Road, and spent 2 hours at the kitchen table examining every piece. She confirmed the pearls were natural saltwater. She documented 14 pieces. Eugene drank instant coffee from a mug that said, "World's Best Pop Pop." The earrings and cameo were consigned to Heritage Auctions in New York. The catalog entry noted provenance from the Zukowski family of Krakow, Noreen's grandmother's maiden name, which Eugene found in a family Bible in the living room bookshelf. The earrings sold for $91,200. The cameo for $9,800. 3 smaller pieces added another $1,400. Total, $102,400. After commissions, Eugene received just over $83,000. He paid the electric bill, $340, in cash on the way home from the credit union. He sat in his recliner and watched the Weather Channel for 20 minutes without seeing it. Then he called Danny. He called Lisa. He called Kevin. Kevin didn't answer, but Eugene left a message. He told all 3 of them the same thing. "Your mother left us something. I want you to come home so I can tell you about it." Danny came that weekend. He sat at the kitchen table and Eugene told him the whole story. The pawn shop, the kid with the baseball cap, the $30 offer, Catherine finding the pearls at the bottom of the box. Danny listened without saying anything. When Eugene finished, Danny put his hand on his father's hand and said, "Mom would have loved this." Eugene nodded. She would have said, "I told you they were real." Lisa came the following week. She cried, not about the money, about the cameo. She remembered Noreen showing it to her once when she was 10, telling her it came from the old country, and Lisa asking if she could wear it, and Noreen saying, "Someday." Lisa asked Eugene if she could have the cameo. Eugene said no. It had already been consigned. But he gave her the photograph from the auction catalog and Lisa framed it. Kevin called back Tuesday and said he'd try to come in March. Eugene said that was fine. He meant it. You love your children the way they are, not the way you wish they were. Noreen taught him that. He paid off the remaining $18,000 on the mortgage, had the furnace serviced, $380, set aside $15,000 for Danny's kids' college fund, sent Lisa $5,000 for the student loans, sent Kevin $5,000 too, even though Kevin hadn't come to the hospital in time and hadn't called since November, because Noreen would have sent it, and that was reason enough. He kept $30,000 in savings, not to spend, just to have, just to know it was there. Because that's what being poor your whole life does to you. Even when you finally have money, the thing you want most isn't the money. It's the feeling of not worrying. It's lying in bed at night and not doing math in your head. It's opening a bill and not holding your breath, just so the next time the electric bill came in high or the check engine light turned into a real problem, he wouldn't have to stand in a pawn shop and be called buddy by a kid who didn't know anything. The jewelry box is back on the dresser, Noreen's side, next to the Jean Naté that Eugene hasn't moved and won't move. The box is lighter now. The valuable pieces are gone. But it still has the JCPenney earrings, the Avon bracelets, the necklace from the shop downtown that closed in 2004, and the ring with the blue stone that cost $45 in 1986. Those pieces aren't worth anything, not to an appraiser, not to an auction house, not to a kid in a baseball cap with a testing kit. But Eugene didn't sell those. He'll never sell those. Because Catherine Albright was right about the pearls and the cameo and the gold. But she was wrong about one thing. She said the earrings were the most valuable pieces in the box. They weren't. The most valuable piece in that box is a ring with a blue stone that cost $45 from a shop downtown that doesn't exist anymore. A pipe fitter gave it to a secretary on their 16th anniversary because he loved her and it was the best he could do. She wore it every single day for 35 years like it was the Hope Diamond. That's worth more than $97,000. That's worth more than anything. If this story reminded you that worth isn't always obvious, subscribe to Hidden Worth. We have more stories like this one, and every single one of them will surprise you. Because some things have hidden worth.